This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.
Now on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT, HD, WOGL, HD3, Philadelphia. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
If we don't move in our own direction, we're going to become extinct. In fact, in some cases, we're close to being extinct right now.
Presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Serious doctors for serious injuries. And powered by the law offices of Pond, Lehocky, Stern, Giordano. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. A good Saturday to the Delaware Valley, and we welcome you in on a Saturday night along with J-Doc. I'm Krause in the studio. A little bit of an earlier start as we come on here, J-Doc, on Talk Radio 1210. Sunset going down outside. Beautiful look outside as we look at the Ben Franklin Bridge, and as the sun starts to set. We're used to coming on when the nightfall is in front of us, but nice to be here early on a Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. Great show we got planned. Our guests tonight are Ernie Bennett, District Leader of SEIU Local 32, BJ District 1201, Jim Whitehead, who's the Assistant District Leader of SEIU Local 32, BJ District 1201. And of course, we have PA State Rep Ed Neilson representing the 174th Legislative District in Philadelphia County. And we got former Super Bowl champion Raheem coming on at the end of the show. We're going to talk a little football, in the last segment. So great show.
Good way to end the show. We'll talk about the big game in Minnesota with Raheem Brock. We look forward to that. Also, a couple of big announcements on this show, on this very program. We got started, J-Doc, just a week or so ago with our jobs initiative, and I want to continue to bring all of our listeners up to speed and continue to remind the listening audience here on Talk Radio 1210, not only about the initiative, but about the objective of the initiative, about the buy-in from City Council, the support from the city, and a lot of good plans coming up.
So Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor's new Philly at Work Jobs Initiative is an initiative that's going to combine the elements of labor, apprentice programs, small business, who employs 60% of our workforce, like Pat Iding says. Obviously, as labor people, we care about everybody with a collective bargaining agreement, but even those without a collective bargaining agreement, we support their initiative. And of course, the ability to get jobs in people. We're going to celebrate everything jobs. We're going to have HR professionals, headhunters. We're going to have labor leaders, apprentice coordinators, the whole deal. We got some great stuff, and it's going to happen every week here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
Yeah, you mentioned Pat Iding in your conversation or your dialogue about jobs. Pat Iding is going to settle in here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor with the President's Report. That's going to air every third week of the month, so it will not be a consistent weekly effort by Pat, but we appreciate him jumping in and being a part of this mission and this vision of Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, and he'll join us as well.
Exactly. We're going to celebrate the return of Pat Iding. He's going to have a monthly show, the President's Hour, and Pat was our co-host for 3 years here. We surely missed him, and we're so happy he's going to be back. Obviously, busy schedule, and of course, next week's Labor Leader Roundtable will feature Ryan Boyer, tribute to Black History Month. A great show we got coming. So much going on here at Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, and I'm just so excited to be a part of it.
Take relax, Jade. I'll catch your breath, brother.
I ran like 2 miles to get here, Joe.
I will remind everybody on our roundtable, we'll be live at the Sonesta Hotel, one of our partners, one of our proud partners, here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. We welcome Jim Stevenson, our good friend from Chapman Ford, who joins us as one of the partners on the program, Chapman Ford, and we're glad to have Jimmy on board. I visited with him at this week over at the office. He's all jacked up about the big game next Sunday.
What big game are you talking about, Joe? I'm not familiar with it.
So a lot of good stuff here on Saturday Night Live on Talk Radio.
Go Eagles.
1210 WPHT. Listen, we're going to break out into an Eagle chant pretty soon, right?
Oh, my God. Believe me, I'm going to make sure, gentlemen, that we don't make the same mistake the guy on the news did. First time I ever seen it in public, where the guy misspelled Eagles. Remember? He spelled it E-A-G-L-E-A-S, Eagles. Somebody had to do it. I think he had a couple bruises in him at the time, but wow. And the news reporter had to act like it didn't happen. But so we will do something like that, Joe. Yes.
So that covers a lot of ground for our listening audience about what they can expect as we roll on here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. J-Doc, let's get into it. We got 4 good segments tonight. We're loaded with great guests, as you have already mentioned. Let me give you an opportunity to set the stage, set the table. We'll jump right into the conversation.
Sure. So I'm extremely happy to have Ernie Bennett and Jim Whitehead here, and of course Representative Ed Neilson. And I said to Representative Ed Neilson as we launched the show, when we were planning the show this week, the representatives from SEIU Local 32 BJ, I said, listen, is there a political leader you'd like to bring on that is in line in what you're talking? And we said, listen, we can get Barack Obama, we can get Joe Biden, and they chose Ed Neilson. So here we are.
I thank them for that.
But so we're happy to have everybody. We're going to start off, gentlemen, talking about a topic that most people would think would be, wow, sounds great. Sounds like, who wouldn't like right to work? Yeah. And so it's not work. Right. And so it's a deceptive term used by the right. Ernie, give us a little bit of, and our listeners, a little bit of information about what right to work is, and the fact that there's new legislation that, if passed, could hurt the entire labor movement across the country.
Thank you, Joe. Well, right to work is a deception. It sounds good. It sounded good to me when I first heard it. But as a labor leader, it hurts collective bargaining. And it doesn't afford us the right to bargain. It weakens our power. And it's not good for any of labor leaders or union brothers and sisters. So this right to work is being moved up in Supreme Court. It was eventually to be heard by Justice Scalia.
Yeah, right.
Scalia died.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
You hate to win like that, but Scalia, when he left, it was a 5-5. Last time they voted, I think it was 5-5.
And so right now, Neil Gorsuch was nominated, and he's taking the seat, and we believe that this court case will be heard somewhere in February, maybe around February 26th. And if it doesn't render in our favor, it basically is an attempt to strip us of our collective bargaining rights and afford people the option to have a union without being involved with paying union dues.
And let me get you to weigh in on that, just so because that's some heavy stuff that Ernie is referencing there, and it's hard sometimes as you listen, as the audience listens. It's hard sometimes to wrap your arms around exactly what that means and what the fallout is.
Well, that's what it is. It's what they do is it's a misunderstanding by design. They attempt to tell you, hey, this is a great piece of legislation. We need to push this forward. But all the studies show the average worker, in 28 states that this is part of, they have lost 4% of their salary, or $1,500 to $2,000 a year. And these studies are Googled. You can go all over line. They're all on there. They try and tell you the truth about it. This legislation, they do nothing to grant anyone the right to a job, nor does it protect those that have a job from losing it. It takes the workers' rights all the way around. And that's kind of what's going on in Pennsylvania. I mean, we've seen it. There's a group of people, and one of the leaders is Representative Kaufman, who's now the chairman of Labor and Industry in the House of Representatives.
Unbelievable.
Last week, they were doing hearings on project labor agreements. They're trying to do away with everything. And these are proven things that time over time have benefited those using them. I mean, project labor agreements, cities around the country and little counties and all, they use them all the time. It saves them money, keeps them under budget, and makes certain that you have experienced craftsmen doing the work. I mean, you talk about apprenticeship programs.
Sure.
And you're getting ready to do a big thing with Ryan Boyer. And I went through an apprenticeship program.
Oh, you're people who don't know, the representative is a lifelong member of Local 98. Yep. So you've been, and
I'm an electrician by trade. I mean, that's what I am, and that's what I am. I'm an electrician. My father was, my grandfather, and I'm a proud electrician, and I believe I was good, but I'm sure there's some naysayers out there that worked with me. You might say I'm not as good as I thought. I'd be doing better as a politician than the electrician. So, but this is something that's going on, and it's going around across the country, and it's something we have to gather together and get everybody motivated to make certain. I mean, we talk about judges. I mean, these judges are making decisions for our life. And if you look at the judicial elections, they're always low. They're some of the most important elections we have, and people just don't get it until they make that decision against you.
Jim, let me bring you into the conversation before we go to our break here in the opening segment. We'll continue the dialogue when we come back after the break. Let me ask you that point, that Ed ended with. People don't get it. Why don't people get it? It confuses me.
Well,
that's what I don't understand.
It's because we have to educate the workforce. We have to educate the communities. We have to educate the people out there as to what this does. What this does, it starves the unions of their resources. As former Secretary Treasurer, I handled all the finances of the union. And when you eliminate the dues collection, it's going to eliminate our resources. We don't have the money to negotiate contracts, to hire lawyers, to enforce our contracts, to hire staff, to pay the rent, pay the light bills.
So they want to starve
basically,
us.
it puts us out of business is what it does. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to put us out of business with given the perception that it's helping the worker. And it's not helping the worker. Right now they're going around, from what we're getting feedback, they're going around knocking on union members' doors in purple shirts, because purple's our color, saying, here, you don't have to pay union dues, and you can get out of the union, you don't have to pay union dues. Wouldn't that be great? You can save an extra $40 a month, but in reality, you're going to lose thousands of dollars.
And all your representation.
Well, if you lose representation, you can't negotiate bargain contracts, and then if you can't bargain contracts, your standard of living is going to drop because now you can't afford to get bargain for raises, benefits, work rules, everything, overtime, everything.
The organizations that back this legislation are the Koch brothers and stuff like that. These are big multi-billionaires,
far right-wing individuals,
and they've been financing them since the Taft-Hartley Act. Since 1955, these big corporations are trying to keep them stagnant and keep the wages lower. This way, their their stockholders make more money. And that's what it's about. It's not about the worker. It's about the companies.
Not about the workers at
You're
all.
welcome to weigh in tonight here on Talk Radio 1210. I have a feeling the show is going to move quickly. We'll get to our first commercial break. We welcome your calls. We'll entertain those. If you're interested in dialing in, Scott holding on. He begs to differ. We'll get to him after the break. Let's get to a commercial break. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Back in a moment. Back here live on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Ernie Bennett is the district leader of SEIU Local 32BJ, District 1201. Jim Whitehead is the business agent with SEIU Local 32BJ, District 1201. Pennsylvania State Rep. Ed Neilson, representing the 174th Legislative District, is in studio as well. Full house coming up later on in the program. Raheem Brock will join us. We'll talk a little bit of football at the end of the program. I'm Krause along with J-Doc in the studio. Right to work is the conversation tonight. It's going to move quickly. We welcome your thoughts. We welcome your opinions. Whether you agree or not with the topic, we welcome you. Scott joining us on the hotline here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Scott, a good Saturday evening, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you. And Jim, Ed, and Ernie, let me salute you for sticking up for the worker and speaking for the worker, and I want to compliment you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much.
It's a very trying time for workers here in America. My name's Scott Walker. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Delaware. Okay, and one of the things that right to work proponents say is why are the union leadership afraid of giving the workers the choice to join a union or not, or to pay dues or not? And gentlemen, how would you respond to that?
Well, that's already covered under the Taft-Hartley Act. That was passed many years ago, and that's covered within there. So, first off, good luck in your congressional run. We need some good congressmen down there that actually know about working people. But
Thank you.
There are choices. Okay, there are choices. There are choices that you don't have to be part of the union. You can't force anybody to join a union. Most people, I always tell people I was union by birth, not by choice, but I chose to join a union just as my brother and my father and my family. I mean, we're all about it. And I think why we see unions are on decline right now, I think you're going to see them come back. And I have a different perception as many, because right now, I'm going to say there's a lot of people at home checking their work emails, checking their smartphones, and checking everything. They're putting 90 hours of work in a week and don't even realize it. And unions started because of these sweatshops and stuff like that made everybody work 90 hours a week. Right. So we want to get back to 40 hours. And that's what we fight for. Union leaders all across the city and the country fight for the rights of workers. Whether they're union or not union, they really don't care. You hear people talking about standing up for living wages and $15 an hour now and all. And SEIU, I mean, gentlemen, you're big proponents on this. I've marched down the airport with them just to get the baggage handlers $10.88 an hour. The airlines wouldn't even pay them. We were there at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, marching on them, trying to get them to understand you can't raise a family or have kids. But I think this is something that is going to bounce back with good people in Congress, and if I stay up in the House, we'll do just that.
Jay, let me let you weigh in.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you talk about the difference that unions make. You talk about the 40-hour work week, overtime pay, child labor laws, lunch. Believe it or not, lunch is not a given right in the state of Pennsylvania. Right. And so unions are the voice of the middle class, and yeah, I mean, there's been obvious decline over the decades, but I agree with Ed 100%. Not only are they on the decline, but when you start, you add right to work legislation on there, and let's just very quickly take a look at a workplace where individuals are coming in, they choose not to pay dues. Okay, so you got 100 union individuals, 50, so it gets 51 of them end up not paying dues. Now all of a sudden you don't have a collective bargaining situation. Now all of a sudden the employer has the upper hand. Next thing you know, the wages are going down. Right to work is right to work for less. That's one of the main reasons we need labor unions to represent the standards across America. Where's the voice of the middle class going to go?
Jim, I'd like to compliment you on that comment that you made. 12% of people that don't have unions are making less. So when you have a union, you can lift wages up, and without a union, wages go down. And the important thing is that, when we came to this conclusion that right to work is wrong, it's based on the fact that so many people don't have unions, are making less, can't afford to provide for their families, and we're totally against that. We're just not advocating that this is a union thing. This is a humane thing for people to be able to uplift themselves, to be able to afford to take their families to the doctors, to be able to afford to take their families on vacations without feeling as though they got to make ends meet or they got to cut corners. So if this legislation gets passed, what it does, it cripples our ability to negotiate with the powers that be that say, why are you worth this? We're worth this because we put the work in, we put the labor in, and you should compensate us for our hard work.
Well, let me follow up with that, Ed. Let me start with you, Jim. I'm going to come to you after Ed. But, Ed, I want to start with you and ask you if you have a thought as to why someone who is not in the union would be in favor of right to work, would oppose union and the benefits that union provide, the benefit that unions provide. I struggle with understanding why that is.
There's public perception. Perception's 90% of the business, even in the political world. And they believe when they see someone picketing and disrupting something, everybody, they label. It's a bad label.
Radicals.
But when you travel, I've traveled the state. I worked under Governor Rendell as Executive Deputy Secretary of Labor.
Right.
And I got a chance to travel all across the state in some places. And you have to explain it to people because they're not understanding what the union's about and how the protection's there. Scott brought up about the Taft, we were talking about Taft-Hartley a little bit. If you're working for an employer that's a covered employer by a labor agreement and you happen to be one of the non-union employees there, if you get fired, that union still serves you. And that's why they collect a small portion. They don't collect the same portion of a union member, but they collect the same portion, a little portion to keep the lights on. Right. Because And that's helpful. So they're trying to cut this legislation's out there and all. They're trying to cut those funds off. They're trying to turn the lights off, okay? Because you can have 25,000 employees. Like, I mean, SEIU has thousands of employees across the state. I won't even begin to guess.
180,000 in our local.
180,000. So just there alone, if you cut, you have to answer calls from 180,000 people. I mean, if you cut that staff off and cut that lifeline, there's going to be no one there answering the phones.
Exactly.
No one to give these people help, whether you're union or non-union. None of them are getting help. So workers are protected under Taft-Hartley. And I mean, look, it was a bipartisan measure. I think it's 1955 or something like that is when it passed, or 47. And this is something we have to protect. We have to protect the workers and continue it. But we have to educate our neighbors, because what we don't do is we don't talk about it.
Exactly.
We don't talk to our neighbors anymore. When I was a kid, when I went to store, I used to have to stop by 5 neighbors' houses to see if they needed milk or bread. All right, that's what our parents did. Those aren't there no more. We have to teach our children to start being more of a community, because we're not. Sometimes you don't even know the neighbors until you end up shoveling a sidewalk out front 2 years later. I mean, I'm lucky because, lucky or not, I chose to knock on doors. I knock a lot of doors, and I get to know, what everybody's feeling. And that's probably the most humble part of my whole
Well,
position.
labor to neighbor is a big part of
Big
what
part.
We do a lot of that. We do a lot of the door knocking. We do a lot of social activities, get out there, talk to people in the neighborhood. But here's the question you have to ask people that aren't in the union. What benefits you from what the union did in 1947?
Agreed.
The 5-day work week, after 40 hours, time and a half for overtime. You know, all these laws were enacted because of unions. If we didn't have unions, you wouldn't have these laws. What do we want to do? Go back to the triangle shirtwaist fire back in 1930s, where there was women on fire jumping out of a 6-story building because they were locked in their workplace. They were actually locked in.
Hey, look what they're doing in China at the Apple plants.
So
as recent as 4 years ago, they have suicide nets over there. And that might sound extreme, but this is today's world. This isn't like this isn't outer space. So I agree with you.
Yeah, well, you know, people will say I'm an alarm ringer. You know, that's the extreme. Well, if that happens, if unions are outlawed or starved out, and you don't have that protection, and you don't have that right to bargain, and you don't have the right to bring the middle class up, what's going to happen to the middle class? We'll become a third world. Almost a third world country, where all you have is the poor and you have the rich,
right?
And the people in between will have nothing. It's reverting back to the Stone Ages.
Let's bring Tim in quick, who's joining on the hotline here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Tim, we welcome you in to Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. Thanks for holding on. How are you on a Saturday night?
I'm pretty well, guys. I try to listen to your show every Saturday night.
We appreciate you doing that, and we hope you'll stay with us. Got a lot of good stuff coming in 2018.
I'm not so sure about that, but I mean, I'm under the. Don't take this the wrong way, but even a bad union is better than no union. And
Correct.
And what we've done, and I'm not advocating violence in any way, but all the unions in this country are too splintered. We don't stick up for one another the way it used to be. The Teamsters aren't any longer a big factor. If there was one trade on strike, everybody was on strike. We don't do that anymore. I mean, look at Germany. The other day they had 160,000 guys out there in the street. Now you extrapolate that would probably equal 500,000 union members in the United States. Pick a day and strike. You know, we can't. The legislative process isn't working anymore. That's it, guys. Thank you,
Jimmy. Thank you,
brother.
Go ahead, Jim.
There's a lot of legislation that was passed to prevent a lot of that. Like the air traffic controllers, they couldn't go on strike. Like the school district employees, we can't go on strike. If we go on strike, we can lose our job, and our pension benefits will be affected to a certain extent. They can't take your pension, but some of our benefits will be affected by that. So a lot of legislation has been passed to prevent that, brother. Like they used to do back in the '60s and the '50s. So that's a big reason why a lot of unions aren't together in that issue.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. Ernie Bennett, Jim Whitehead, Ed Neilson, J. Doc, and Krause in studio. We welcome your calls. We'll continue the conversation after the break. Back here live on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. We'll talk about our union brothers who are playing football next Sunday out in Minnesota. We'll talk about that with Raheem Brock. He'll join us at the very end of our broadcast tonight as we get ready and look ahead.
Hey, I wanted to jump in with Tim a little bit because he brought up some good points, but I wanted to make certain that everybody knew the solidarity's out there, Tim. You might not see it, as Jim pointed out, because some of the laws changed and doesn't allow everybody to walk out at once. But solidarity throughout the city is big. You can see that up in the State House. You can see that in City Council. And you can see it in Congress. Most of the unions have representatives every time we're in session. And they join us to make certain that we know the issues and know the issues. And they let us know if they're in our neighborhood and something's gone wrong or they need help from us. And we reach out and help them. But the solidarities, they are all rock solid and sticking together as every union person should.
And you mentioned, Jim, you mentioned during the break the Central Labor Council with Pat Eiding and the Johnny Dock at the building trades, and SEIU Local 32 BJ District 1201 with the big march you guys had down there on Chestnut Street. I mean, there was a ton of different unions there, and
well, Tim's point, J. Doc. And everybody can weigh in, was what? He wants everyone at one given moment to collectively stand up and
like a national strike. And like Ed said, there's laws that have been passed that prevent unions from doing that, and if they do violate that law, some of the union officials or most of them would wind up in jail, litigation, and it's going to be a never-ending battle on issues like that. What we have to do is we have to change the laws that would enable us to go back to the way it was in the 60s and the 50s.
But even if that doesn't happen, the point also there's ways for solidarity, like boycotting. So say there's a food company that's pressing down on their workers and really hurting them. Well, there's boycotts. We don't have to eat that kind of
right. Well,
you saw or whatever.
You saw it when Nabisco closed. When Nabisco closed and moved all those Nabisco plants, as we all, I lived in the Northeast.
Sure,
we smell those cookies burn. Okay, look, they're no longer burning. They moved to Mexico, and they had no bones about it. They just got up and picked up and moved. And I was with the state. We had the city, state officials there trying to get them to stay.
I know.
And we threw millions and millions of dollars. Some people say we didn't do enough. We attempted. We didn't want that. That building's empty. Now it's going to be a shopping center. They knocked it down. It's a disgrace. There's hundreds and hundreds of workers that affect it. They're nowhere because they can't move to Mexico for a job. They've been working in that plant for their whole life from high school. Now what are they? Now they're on the street.
Ed, when it's election year, when the DNC's coming to Philadelphia, when there's a need to organize or to pull together a mass of supporters and a mass of people during election time, all of a sudden unions, to me, seem to be more important.
It's like you can't go to a parade without seeing unions in them. You can't go anywhere in the area. Just Labor Day. Look at Labor Day. Thousands and thousands march down Columbus Boulevard.
One in the country.
One big party at the end. And it's not a party just for the members.
Outing.
It's a family party. I mean, they're bringing their families down, and that's what we did. I grew up with it at my table, just like many in the room have.
Yep.
Okay, that's what we do. My children, I have 3 in school now. They grow up with it at the table. They get it. They understand.
And mine too. And Ernie, the solidarity SEIU Local 32 BJ. I mean, the day of that big march, and I think that might have been the first time I met you guys. Man, that was impressive.
Well, that's what we stand for. We're one family. We're stronger together. And when there's a call to come out, our brothers and sisters come from all parts of the United States. They come from all parts of the East Coast.
One band, one sound.
One band, one sound, and we don't get it. We shut it down. So unions are very conscious of this right-wing movement, and I agree that we need to dialogue more and show more solidarity within other unions. But as a 32 BJ, district leader, I'm standing here with Jim Whitehead and with you guys, proud to say 32BJ is always in the front, okay, for fighting for social injustices, okay, for fighting for better contracts, knocking on doors, engaging and empowering people to empower themselves.
Jim, let me ask you.
If I can pick up on him real quick, because it was well said, but I think we missed something that SEIU does, okay? I talked about the airport earlier.
Oh, my God, yes.
How we marched on the airport.
Standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves.
But here's the thing. They're not part of the union. This is social justice.
Right.
They are not they weren't SEIU members. Okay? They saw an injustice and they spoke up and they marched on them and this is what their members' dues are paying.
How about the fast food workers too? SEIU
all over the place.
Fight for 15.
They are doing this all over the place. Okay, and this does not affect one of their workers because, in all honesty,
they have a collective bargaining.
They have a collective, and they're making more money than $15 an hour. They're not making, $10.80. I mean, they're working for it, and they got health care, and they got a retirement so they can retire with dignity. Look, I look at John Doc and I, and why I say John Doherty, prayers out to his family.
Absolutely.
He's going through a tough time.
Thoughts and prayers.
Please, everybody say a prayer for his family. But the union, non-human, okay? Right. SEIU goes after these non-human people, these people that won't give you enough hours to get health care.
Right.
They won't pay when your kid gets sick. And we've had some of these companies with boxes at their doors during the holidays to feed their employees.
Exactly.
That's how bad it is. I mean, it is bad, and they fight for social injustice, and I think you ought to be applauded for that.
A lot of those members, a lot of those airport workers are being organized right as we speak. We're doing a campaign in Philadelphia Airport, Newark Airport, down in Florida. We're organizing. That's one of our biggest things. We organize.
Absolutely.
But to stress the importance of unions, without the unions, we wouldn't have what we're doing now with our apprenticeship program. We just have 6 kids out of high school that were 3 of them are electricians, 3 of them are plumbers out of high school, out of the Philly high school system that we're running through our apprenticeship program that was generated from grants from Harrisburg. Bob Hunter, our director of maintenance, went to Harrisburg in conjunction with SEIU 32BJ. We went after some apprenticeship money was out there, and we got it. And now we have kids that are in apprenticeship programs, and we're going to expand on that. And without the union, you don't have that. What's out there for these kids? Because everybody's not going to go to college, and then a lot of them, when they do get out of college, there's not a job waiting for them anyway.
Jim, weigh in for me on changing how do you change the mindset? It's one thing to preach to the choir. How do you change the thought process of the individual or of the family or of the college student who's out there, who's not familiar with 32BJ, who's not familiar with a family upbringing like Ed had? How do you change the mindset
You have to put boots on the ground. You have to pound the pavement. You have to educate. Education is key to letting everybody know what's going on. If without education, there's nothing. You have to let them know. You have to give them a history. You have to give them the history lesson of where we started. Like I said, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. The one over in Pakistan a couple years ago where people were jumping.
Bangladesh.
Yeah, they were. The building went on fire and they were jumping out the top of the window because there was no restrictions on abusing the workers.
All the doors were shut. They were chained together, and they killed hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah, it was terrible.
And when I have these discussions, I say, listen, if you want to know what it's like in location in places in the world and in the country where there's no, if you want to know what it's like not to have a union, just look at the places in the country and around the world.
That's
why they don't have it.
But J-Doc, to push back, I'm going to push back on it and say this: the public.
Well, that's why we're doing shows like this.
But I'm saying the public doesn't. They don't grasp.
Well, that's because they see the rat, and they think that the rat is unions bullying. But what they don't understand is there's people being taken advantage of in that building.
Krause, I get it. And I'm going to touch something that we've passed and some things that we've passed in Harrisburg about education. So a lot of times we say, okay, look, part of your education curriculum has to be you have to learn about Black History Month. You have to learn about the Holocaust. Okay, maybe we should start looking into legislation and start requiring our public schools to talk about labor history.
I totally agree with that.
Because they don't get it as a kid, they come out and they say, "Oh,
yeah.
I don't want that. I want
Totally
that."
agree.
All right, until they get hurt. No one realizes how much they need a union until they lose a job,
And they have no representation.
And they say, "Well, who do I call?"
No voice.
And a friend of mine's going through a grievance process right now, and he says, "Well, this is how they responded. What should I?" I said, "Listen, you have your union rep. You need to go to them. They will work this out for you. Not your state rep, your union rep. You need to work that out, and they will walk you through the process." And he tried to do it on his own, and he can't. He can't do it because there's lawyers in that office.
They got their protocols.
We're
set.
not lawyers. We're tradesmen. I mean, we talk. We talked about it, but I think education is a key. The temperature, unfortunately, in Harrisburg, with the way the Senate and the House and all this redistricting stuff is going, it's kind of hard to pass any labor-friendly bill in Harrisburg. We're fighting every day to keep these anti-labor bills out of here, and it's tough. You're more trying to be proactive, but you can't be. You're being reactive because new ones coming every day.
Ernie, you get last word of the segment.
I'd just like to say, on behalf of being a labor leader, labor is what we do from the time we wake up in the morning and we try to provide a living for our families. And in being in a union, it affords you a decent opportunity to provide that living wage, those benefits. And I don't know where I would have been, Miss Bennett and myself, had we not have had a union. We couldn't have possibly raised 5 children and not be able to take them to the hospital when they were sick. The union has afforded me and so many thousands of other people an opportunity to sleep better at night. So labor is union, union is labor, and for those who don't understand it, maybe you can't miss what you never had, but we're empowering you to get on board. Don't be fooled by these right-wingers on right to work, because right to work is wrong.
Back here live on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210. 1 week from tonight, our roundtable, labor leader roundtable, live from the Sonesta Hotel. Ryan Boyer and a great group, J-Doc, all lined up for a week from tonight.
Yeah, so can't wait for that. It's going to be tribute to Black History Month, fantastic. Okay, so we're ending the show tonight. There must be there can't be more than a handful of people in the city of Philadelphia, in the history of the city of Philadelphia, that have a Super Bowl ring on their hands. And I'm proud to bring in my friend to the broadcast to weigh in on what's going to happen in the big game next week, because he's been there, he's won the big one, and I can't wait for his insight. Raheem Brock from Temple fame, from Indianapolis Colts and the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome to the show, Raheem.
Hey, how you doing, Joe? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. We're here with the guys, and listen, I'm 53 years old, even though I only look like I'm in my early 30s. I don't want to shock anybody, but at my age right now, I don't know how many more chances I'm going to get at the opportunity of that parade down Broad Street. Give me your synopsis of what you think is going to happen next Sunday.
I think everything is going to start with the coaches. I mean, the coaches have to come up with a great game plan, because right now you're going against a master chess player. So this is a chess game. And Brady is the master. So you have to, study the guy, he studied the game, he knows the game so well. You just have to be prepared for the best and come up with your best game. But the coaches, it starts with the coaches. They've been doing a great job so far. The players have been doing a great job, and I think the key most of to get to Brady.
Yeah.
If you watch us, Indianapolis, when we played them, and then the Giants, when they beat the Patriots, they all ran our games that we ran.
And right, and when you think about that, and I'm proud to say it all started with the defensive front, and that's where you guys put the pressure on them, and that's where the Giants beat them, and certainly. It's hard to believe when we're all talking about Tom Brady. You've taken him down. How hard is it when you are playing a master strategy master like Bill Belichick to keep him under control for 60 minutes?
It's very hard. I mean, it's the most attention to detail that you possibly can. But the guys, they got there for a reason. You know, they're not scrubs. The Eagles they're great players. You know, they have what they need to win the game.
Yeah, but we always see Belichick do something up his sleeve. I mean, what do you think he's got up his sleeve for our Eagles this time? I mean, I'm over here looking at this bridge turning green, okay, and I'm getting excited, all right? But what's he have up his sleeve? We see the Inflategate. We've seen everything with these guys. What do you think they're going to throw at our guys in green?
You never know what's going to happen with this. I don't know what's going to happen, but, I mean, he's a great coach. He's going to try to attack what he thinks the weakness of the defense is.
Yeah.
And also you got Brady. You know, everybody tries to read his eyes, but he's so good at understanding the game and understanding defense and knowing guys who's going to be looking at his eyes and where he'll send the guys a different way, knowing you're looking at his eyes, and throw it to the guy he knows is open. I mean, he's the master.
Got to play that ball when it's in the air, not when it's in his hand, right? And it's
But it's not impossible.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
Nope.
We have a great front seven, and if we're going to win this game,
we got to come in.
It's up to them.
The defense, the game is won in the trenches, and I think our defensive line has got the edge. And like you said, Raheem, you gotta outsmart them. So I think Schwartz is going to come up with a package that's going to try and confuse Brady a little bit and put a little pressure, maybe some stuff we didn't see on that defensive line, some stunts and twists and scrapes and twists and that kind of stuff where linebackers blitz and maybe go zone blitz or disguise coverages and rotate coverages and all that good stuff.
Yep, and guys just have to be comfortable and have fun. That's it.
Brock, before we go, real quick, give me a prediction.
I think the Eagles are going to win by 3.
Wow.
That's 3 touchdowns, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's 3 points.
I know.
It's going to be a 3-point game. I think it's going to be up to that front seven. It's going to be tight, and I think it's going to be a 3-point game.
From your lips to God's ears, Raheem Brock, Super Bowl champion, thanks so much for weighing in, my friend.
Yes, anytime. Let's go Eagles.
All right.
E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles!
Good stuff.
All right. Thanks, Brock.
Home, baby.
See you, pal.
Good stuff from Raheem Brock. Certainly somebody that understands what it is to wear the jewelry.
And to take Brady down.
And to win that game, all coming up a week from now. The city's going to be on fire all week. And we're glad to be a part of it. And
I'm scared to death,
We're
man.
glad to enjoy it. I don't necessarily know if I want to be there when they're greasing the poles on Broad Street or Criscoing the poles on Broad Street.
Well, we have great political leadership like Mr. Nielsen and
we're in
Mr.
house.
Kenny and
The
all
house
them,
is
right?
in session next week. I hope they don't have this parade till Thursday. I don't know what the mayor's trying to do here. I want a Thursday parade. Any parade is good.
Listen, that's what I'm saying. It's a problem that we're going to be glad to have, but
It's all about the adjustments, Joe. If the Eagles can make the adjustments, which they have shown that they can do. When the Falcons were attacking them on the edge in that won the playoff game, the Eagles made the adjustment and they shut down the run off the edge. The next week, the Vikings were blitzing them, so they made the adjustment where they were thrown to the backs out and where they were throwing screens.
We got sports talk here, man.
So
I'm right with you, Jim.
The Eagles are making the adjustment a lot quicker than what they were doing in the beginning of the season and last season. Schwartz is making that defensive adjustment to counter what the offense is doing, and Peterson has made the adjustment on the offense to counter what the defense is doing to them.
It's a chess game.
That's why it's a chess game.
And
Right?
let me take one moment to take the success of everything, the success of the team and everything in Philadelphia and all of the enjoyment that we've all experienced, especially for those in the house at the link over the last 2 weeks, and bring it all back full circle. All big events that occur in the city
Very
of
interesting you say
Philadelphia
that.
all come back to the hands, the blood, and the sweat of union workers who put this city together.
True that.
And when we do, and we talk about right to work, and we have that dialogue, I continue to encourage, not the choir, but those that don't, I continue to encourage them to keep an open mind to the dialogue.
Absolutely, and I want to thank Ernie Bennett, Jim Whitehead, and Ed Nielsen.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Guys, unbelievable show. Your insight was just amazing, and I'm so happy to. And this demonstrates that our labor leadership in the city of Philadelphia is strong across the board.
Ed, I give you last word. You got 30 seconds just to put a summary and certainly a thank you to you for being in the studio as well.
Thanks, and I appreciate you having me down here today. And let me talk about these important issues facing working families, not just union families, working families throughout the Commonwealth. Yep. I'm a big Eagles guy. You guys got your green. I see all the Eagles. This room is filled with green. No one can see that, but they need to know that. All right, you got your green beret on there. All right, but go Eagles, and everybody have a safe weekend and enjoy the game.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed.
All right, that's going to do it for Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor here on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, Serious Doctors for Serious Injuries, powered by Pond, Lahaki, Stern, and Giordano, the workers' compensation law firm, and, of course, fueled by Chapman Ford and our good friend Jimmy Stevenson. Don't forget, next week, our partner, the Sinesta, will host us all for the Labor Leader Roundtable. On behalf of J-Doc, I'm Krause. See you next time.
This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.